Let me put it, if Charles Oliveira wasn't on this card, I would feel robbed blind if I paid $85 for this pay-per-view card. Welcome back to Hey Jive Picks, the #1 channel for MMA content. Make sure you hit the subscription button down below. Hit the like. Drop a comment on anything you want to get my take on. Stay tuned for the live watch parties. Let's get into the video. UFC 289. This is the dud card of the year. This is the one that if you're running low on money, you might want to skip it. But they enticed us with one guy, with one fight that we all wanted to see. They know what they're doing because that man is saving the card. UFC 289 headlined by Amanda Nunes and Irene Aldana. And then they stick Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush on the co-main event. Now, it wasn't originally supposed to be on this card, but I think the UFC is like, man, this card might sell like 20,000 pay-per-views if we don't stack it with like a good co-main event, let alone one of the bigger pay-per-view draws. Charles Oliveira, one of the bigger stars in the UFC. They had to throw him on there. He was supposed to fight at UFC 288, and they pull him out for an injury, which ultimately made that card kind of like mayhem, where they had to put Bilal and Gilbert Burns in there late, short notice in the co-main event spot. But I think that worked out for him, because if Charles and Beneil are not on this card, bro, I don't even know if I'd buy it. Like, it's a solid card for like a fight night. Like, it's a solid UFC on ABC card. But they just can't. You can't headline Amanda Nunes without a top tier opponent. You just really can't. It doesn't work. We look at her previous history. She only does well when she's in the co-main event spot. She's a very solid co-main eventer. You could put her with whoever. It's a championship bout, co-main event spot, solid. But you just can't match her up with a name that's not already like it has to be an established name, or at least someone that presents a very good story with it. And we'll get into that. But she's had really good pay-per-view numbers in the past, but her opponents are the reason why that happens. Like, she's the GOAT, don't get me wrong. But Miesha Tate, they do 1 million pay-per-view buys. That's UFC 200. But that is in large part to Miesha Tate just having defeated Holly Holm, who had defeated Ronda Rousey. So that's kind of the end of the train. And it was UFC 200, and Brock Lesnar was on the card. So she was the main event, but I mean, that card was just stacked to the gills. Like, she could be the third fight on the card, but they do 1 million pay-per-view buys there. These are off of Tapology. You know, you can always they're somewhat accurate. You move on. UFC 207, Amanda Nunes, Ronda Rousey. It's Ronda Rousey. Like, she is the one bringing the pay-per-view buys to that card. It's the main event, UFC 207. It does 1.1 million. We move on. They give her Valentina Shevchenko at UFC 215. That was the second time that they had fought. But Valentina wasn't a champion. That was at 135. It ended up being a split decision, went all 5 rounds. Valentina didn't have that aura to her to really, like, she's a great fighter, but at that point she hadn't established herself as a champion. So there wasn't that like big clash. And even now, like, they don't put Valentina in main events of pay-per-views. Like, they just know they can't do that. She's a solid co-main eventer, but they know they can't throw out on a main event of a pay-per-view. It's just not going to work. I think they need to understand that with Amanda Nunes. Unless it's a very, very solid name, it just doesn't work. I get it if they just have to burn one every year because they probably pay her a lot of money. And they need her in that main event pay-per-view spot, but she probably doesn't produce. Like, she probably does not produce. Keep it going. Because after that, they give her Raquel Pennington, UFC 224, Nunes versus Pennington, does 85,000 pay-per-view buys. I forget if I said it, but Valentina Shevchenko, they did 100,000. So they move on after that. They go down. So she beats Valentina to retain the belt, and then it goes down against Raquel Pennington to 85,000. That's not a good look, man. Like, she's the main event, and she's not drawing anything. She's the GOAT. And at this time, she wasn't, quite the GOAT, but she's the champion, and she's not drawing these big names or these big buys in these spots. Keep it moving. I mean, she wins after that. I think they figured it out after that. UFC 224, Nunes versus Pennington, 85,000 buys. They don't stick her on a main event until she beats Cyborg in a co-main event spot, Holly Holm in a co-main event spot, and Jermaine Durandamy in a co-main event spot. And then they're like, well, she's the GOAT at this point. She's the GOAT. We could stick her against whoever, and she's going to bring the buys. UFC 250, they match her up with Felicia Spencer in the main event spot. Does anyone care about Felicia Spencer? No disrespect to her, but she's not bringing in the pay-per-view buys like that. She was 8-1 at the time, and they put her against her in the main event spot in Las Vegas. UFC 250, it does 85,000 pay-per-view buys again. What does that tell you? Okay, that tells you that it doesn't work. Like, you need a good name to match up with Amanda Nunes for it to sell. So then they stick her against Megan Anderson as a co-main event spot on the next card. And then they keep her at the co-main event spot at UFC 269 when she fought Juliana Pena because she's a massive favorite. And at that point, Juliana Pena they know that she doesn't really have a name. She was like a plus 600, 700 favorite or underdog. Amanda Nunes was like minus 1,100, minus 1,200, something crazy. Like, she wasn't supposed to win that fight. But then Pena does. And that's the only way they could have justified putting Amanda Nunes in a main event pay-per-view spot again after that, because they made that was the only possible way they could have done it, unless they bring in some big name that's already established, and they don't have that. So they're paying Amanda Nunes this money. They're like, all right, we need to run with this because she hasn't lost in forever. She finally lost. This person she's decent on the mic. Juliana Pena's decent on the mic. She's decent at selling. So they give her the main event spot, UFC 277. And from what the numbers are estimated at, it's not even a year ago, so I don't think they're official or anything. But what it's estimated at is 400,000. That's not, it's not great. It's not terrible. But for a pay-per-view, I honestly think that's a little high. I don't think that really happened. I'm thinking more like 200,000, maybe 300,000, but 400,000. The co-main event might have helped a little bit. It was Brandon Moreno and Kai Kara France for a belt, so that helps a little bit. And it was a solid main card. But the main event was a good fight. But if Juliana Pena hadn't beaten her before that, like, that just would have been another beating for Amanda Nunes against someone that didn't really belong in there. But they're going to have to keep rolling with this. They try to do the trilogy for UFC 289, which is this card. They book her in the main event spot, and Juliana Pena has to pull out. And they're kind of screwed. At this point, they're kind of screwed because there's nobody in the bantamweight division that you could really match Amanda Nunes up with that would solidify a main event pay-per-view spot. Like, this is a solid co-main now with Irene Aldana, but the main event of a pay-per-view, if someone asks you who's on tonight, who's in the main event of the pay-per-view card, and you say Amanda Nunes and Irene Aldana, are they going to run to go buy it? No, they're not. They're just not going to do that. If you're going to have to lead with, okay, Charles Oliveira is in the co-main event. You don't even talk about the main event. You're like, no, Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush are in the co-main event. So that's why you need to buy it. You don't need to buy it because of this main event. You need to buy it for the co-main. That's a problem. Okay? That just should not be happening. But that's kind of where they had to go with it. I think you can get one pass a year where the card is like, it's a pay-per-view card. There's maybe one good fight on it. In this case, Oliveira Dariush. Not to say that Nunes and Aldana won't be a good fight, because I think it actually could be a solid fight, but it's not going to get people in the door. I don't think that's the case. Like, you have to get people in the door, people to get to buy the pay-per-view before it happens. After it happens, everybody can see it after it happens, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, looking at this main card, it's not good, man. It's not good. I mean, starts out with Eric Anders, Marc-Andre Barriault. That's not a pay-per-view main event or main card fight. I mean, Anders has been around for a while. He's all right. Marc-Andre Barriault, obviously from Canada. That's the only reason you could stick him on there, really. Dan Ige, Nate Landwehr is a solid. I think that's probably main card worthy because Nate Landwehr's had a ton of hype in his past couple of fights, and Dan Ige, he's been around for a while, veteran, fought the top guys, so it's like a step up there for Nate, and a lot of people love him. Mike Malott, Adam Fugit. If you gave Malott a better opponent, or at least an opponent that has a better name, it could work, but this doesn't work. Like Adam Fugit is he has no draw. There's no draw there. You could say maybe they're just setting Mike Malott up to have, a big spot on a pay-per-view main card. But there's just no draw for Adam Fugit. And not a lot of people know Mike Malott. Like, unless you're a solid MMA fan or you're just a diehard Canadian, you know MMA or Mike Malott. That's just what it is. Co-main event, Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush. That's the only fight that people are like, yeah, I need to see that. It is what it is. UFC 289 is. I'm glad it's happening. I don't want to sit here and talk like a spoiled brat, but it doesn't compare to anything. Maybe we're just getting spoiled, and I'm talking a little cheap here, but I just want to make it clear. I just don't think Amanda Nunes, at this point in her career, she can't carry a pay-per-view main event spot. She just can't. She doesn't have the draw that she got when she was fighting the likes of Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey, and she's a solid co-main, 100%. She's the GOAT. She just doesn't sell a pay-per-view main eventer, and she doesn't help out at all. I don't think she really cares about it. I think she's solidified herself so much at the top where she has no reason to go out and get on mics and talk, and she just goes out there and fights. I mean, I don't even know if she cares about the fight anymore. She might even just be that good where she's just like, if I win, I win. If I don't, I don't. I think after the Pena loss, that was her motivation to get back and get that win back. But against Aldana, I mean, has Aldana ever called her out? Has Aldana ever said that she was going to beat her? Has she ever... She's not a vocal person either. Like, this is probably one of the worst main events that you could sell in recent memory, honestly. Like, the fight might be awesome, but how do you sell this? How do you really sell this? I mean, the only way you could sell it... Let me make this clear. The way that Irene Aldana said that she could beat Amanda Nunes was that she's Mexican, which, if I'm going to promote this, is kind of the same angle I would go, because we've seen the Mexican champions as of recently, Moreno, Grasso, Yair Rodriguez in the interim, going to be fighting for the undisputed title. That's the only way you could go about it, because you're not like, man, she's got one-shot knockout power. I mean, she's a great fighter. She's a great fighter, and she could get it done. I honestly think she has a great chance, but how do you sell it? I don't think you could sell it. You just have to sell the co-main event, and that's what it is. They were literally trying to selling the trilogy fight in the UFC countdown between Nunes and Pena for like half of the promotion. They were going through the promotion for the Nunes-Aldana fight, and half of the start of it was her attempting to fight Pena for the third time, and then they were like, oh, wait, Pena's out. It's Aldana. She's from Mexico. She's coming to get it. It wasn't a great sell by any means, but, I mean, what can you really do? You got to work with what you got. You don't got much here. You got to focus on the co-main event. But that's I think that's enough. As sad as it is to say, that's probably enough of a co-main event for people to buy it, because Charles is that big, and people want to see how he bounces back from the loss. And if Beneil can get it done, he'll get the title shot. But that's my thoughts on UFC 289. I don't think it's... I'm honestly deciding if I'm going to buy it or not, because it's let me put it, if Charles Oliveira wasn't on this card, I would feel robbed blind if I paid $85 for this pay-per-view card. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one. I'll probably end up doing it, but thank you for watching. Drop a sub down below, drop a comment, drop a like. Hey Jai Picks here on YouTube. If you want to follow me over on Instagram, on TikTok, it's at Hey Jai Picks. We're coming in to you with the content. We're going to do a little watch party for UFC 289 as well, so stay tuned for that. Other than that, thank you for the support. Hey Jai Picks, signing out.